Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Double ALS and weekly program on technology in the classroom. Technology in the classroom is always interesting. It always fights back a little bit. The music that I used to introduce us, I thought was fitting for our group because it was actually written by an artificial intelligence, and you can find it on YouTube. Some beautiful orchestral music for us. Today we have a very special program. This comes to us as an interdisciplinary team. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but just to give you a sense of what we're going to be doing, it is basically a webinar format. Because we're in webinar format, I ask that you write your questions into the chat box, and then in the remaining, after about a half an hour presentation, we will have about 15 minutes for question and answer, and I will be sharing the questions that you provided in the chat box to our panel of experts to get a chance to explore the questions that you've had. Don't feel that you need to wait until the end to type your questions in. I'll be collecting those as we go throughout the program. Our program today is a very exciting conversation about a course that has been developed over the past few years. And we are joined today by 4 presenters, our largest program, because they are co-faculty for this program. This is Carney Chagall Pfefferkorn, Scotiabank Proctoral Fellow and an AI and Regulation at the University of Ottawa AI and Society Initiative. We are joined by Neva Elkin-Koren, who is currently on the Faculty of Law at Tel Aviv University and was the previous Dean of Haifa University Law School. We are joined by Avigdor Gal, who is the Benjamin and Florence Free Chaired Professor of Data Science, the Faculty of Industrial Engineering and Management at the Technion, Israel's premier technology university. And we are rounding out the team with Shlomi Hod, a PhD researcher at Boston University. Those are very brief introductions because the team is going to tell you a little bit more about themselves and how they operate together. So with that, I'm going to stop my share, hand it over to the team, and if Carney, you could kick us off.
Great, thank you. Thank you, John, and thanks everyone who joined us. We're excited today to tell you to share with you some insights from a special course that we have developed and taught during the past 2.5 years, one that has both data scientists and lawyers or law students sit together and work jointly on tasks that have to do with responsible AI and actually make them begin to communicate with each other in a manner that we believe helps them really later develop AI systems that are better or more responsible. And we would like to share those insights today with you. But first, we will introduce ourselves, maybe a little bit with more detail.
So I'm Neva Elkin-Koren. I'm a law professor at Tel Aviv University. I'm studying the legal response to technological change, and more recently, I've started to study and to look into the technical solutions to some of the legal problems that we're facing. Avi?
Hi, my name is Avi Gal. I'm a data science professor at Technion. I've started debating ethical and responsible AI issues about a decade ago when we started developing a new undergrad program in data science and trying to see how can we exactly give our engineering students the needed conscience to work with data in a responsible way. I also meet the same issues on a day-to-day practical aspects when working as an advisor to a fintech startup by the name of Pagaya. Carney.
Hi, hello again. I'm a postdoc at Ottawa University. I'm focusing on regulation of AI, or specifically on global regulation and how different countries are trying to regulate or govern AI. And I'm also an entrepreneur, and I'm involved in legal tech, where I see why it is so important that people in charge of law and public policy and the people in charge of technology or who understand technology sit together and understand each other when they're trying to achieve their goals.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shlomi. I'm a PhD student at Boston University in computer science, working on responsible AI, more specifically, question of privacy and explainability of machine learning. In the past, I was also co-founding an NGO in Israel, still existing, to promote social mobility through tech education.
So let's dive into, get a taste of our course by looking at, and the goals that we wanted to achieve by looking at some of the challenges described in this short video.
Artificial intelligence systems make more and more important decisions for us. They bring great benefits, but may also cause unintended harms, such as discrimination, invasion of privacy, or injustice. Throughout the world, various players strive to create responsible AI. They seek to ensure that AI systems lead to better outcomes and avoid harmful consequences. But how to achieve that? A critical aspect of developing responsible AI systems is to ensure that human values are embedded in these systems from the outset. Adopting responsible AI mindset while the system is still on the drawing table is much easier than having to implement changes in products that are already on the market. In order to translate high-level ethical principles to particular design choices, lawyers and data scientists must learn how to communicate in a meaningful way throughout the system's lifecycle. That is easier said than done. Lawyers often have an aversion to numbers, and data scientists may find it difficult to decipher abstract, flexible, interpretable concepts, such as fairness, reasonableness, or justice. Therefore, it is not surprising that lawyers think of data scientists as speaking a different language, and vice versa. The Responsible AI Law, Ethics, and Society course is designed to tackle this challenge. It helps professionals from both worlds to become acquainted with the other discipline in early stages of their career. Unlike other technology and ethics courses, the Responsible AI and Law course is not taught separately to lawyers and data scientists. The course offers a joint learning experience to students and staff from both disciplines. Each session focuses on one of the existing responsible AI challenges. The sessions are designed like a game or an escape room for small teams, where participants must integrate technical and legal skills. Lawyers, data scientists, computer scientists, and engineers all have the power to shape the AI ecosystem. Therefore, the course is not simply another hands-on fun experience to students. It is also forming a significant step towards responsible AI.
So here is a general overview of the course structure. It is composed of 8 sessions, 4 hours each. They're actually designed as mini hackathons. It's not the standard format of law school courses. In each session, we focused on a particular responsible AI theme, such as discrimination and fairness, or transparency, accountability. And we demonstrated with a concrete example in the context of a particular sector. So discrimination or fairness in the context of labor market, or transparency, which is a core issue in responsible AI debates, will be discussed in the context of financial markets. The student composition includes law students, but also data scientists and computer scientists. We try to have an equal number, or a relatively equal number of both. And the way we encourage these 2 different groups of students to communicate with one another is by, first of all, assigning them to mix teams where they actually have to actively engage in solving a particular problem together. And only engaging with one another would allow them to successfully address the challenge. We have now taught this course over the past 3 years, starting with 30 students, then enlarging the group to 45 students. And this year we actually taught it with 60 students, all of them engaged online. It is involving academic institutions from 3 continents. So virtual space enabled us to put together students from the US, from Europe, and from Israel, which made the teams not only diverse in terms of their professional background, but also in terms of the cultural background and rich experiences that they bring to the room.
Before delving into some examples of what exactly did we teach during these sessions, we wanted to share with you the feedback on the course, because it also goes back to 3.5 years ago or 4 years ago, when we started planning how can we teach a course that takes students of law and students of data science that do not know each other's worlds. How can we make it interesting from them both and make them have a meaningful experience? And it was challenging, but the hands-on activities we developed, we think, had a really interesting effect that repeated itself throughout the iterations of the course, because we saw and we still see each course for the first 2-3 sessions. We have students from both disciplines, usually the ones that are really good students who really want to, have high scores, high grades. After the meetings, they come to us, they write us, I'm not sure I'm in the right place. They were saying things I do not understand, I cannot contribute. Because we also know that lawyers, I can say that about myself, sometimes have aversion, to numbers, whereas data scientists may have an aversion to the legal concepts that are more fuzzy in nature and less concrete. And at the beginning, it really is difficult to make them believe they can do it. But then after 2-3 sessions throughout, the different iterations of the course, we always see it, that when they really start to listen to each other, to teach each other, and they become more confident, we call it a magic. Magic appears. And by the 4th and the 5th session, they love the course, and they say it's meaningful, and they say we'll keep in touch and we'll consult each other in the future. So this is why we're excited about this course and want to share some more on what exactly we did.
So the overall and the overarching goal that we have in mind is to reach a situation where the students that graduate from the course basically take a responsible approach to artificial intelligence. Now, this is a very high-level goal, and we needed basically to identify some sub-goals through which we can actually teach them. And these are the learning objectives that we have in mind, and there are 3 of them. The first one is to provide the students with responsible AI literacy. And to do that, as Niva explained before, we were working on 2 verticals. One is the vertical of a theme, where we actually provide the students with different aspects of what is considered nowadays responsible AI. And this can be, for example, discrimination, or it can be privacy. There are more topics than we can handle in one course, so we can also think of changing the main topics based on whatever happens in the world or based on the cohort of students. The other vertical is the sector where we actually introduce them to situations where AI is involved in practice. For example, if we use autonomous cars, then AI is involved in that. If there is an algorithmic selection, then this is part of AI. So by the end of the class, they are introduced to these 6-7 themes and 6-7 different sectors, so they get some kind of a broad coverage of the area. The second objective that we had in mind is the cross-disciplinary dialogue. And here we have 2 reasons to do that. First, in practice, data scientists and lawyers will have to work together when it comes to AI. There may be liability issues that relate to technological aspects, and if you just come from one discipline, you cannot just grasp what you need in order to work as a team. And that's one reason for that. The other reason is that we believe that by creating a cross-disciplinary dialogue, you basically have to become knee-deep in the material. It's not just something that goes over your head by saying, oh, this is like legal stuff. As a data scientist, I don't want to dwell into it, but you really have to do that because this is part of the practice that we have. The third objective is the professional responsibility. And this is aimed for them in their post-graduation work, where they need to, whenever they face a new challenge, they basically need to show professional responsibility. To be honest, we still struggle with this aspect. So we believe that our students do come out with some professional responsibility, but we need to look deeper into it to understand what it means and how can we actually develop tools, how can we test that they actually pass the bar of this professional responsibility.
And we will go next by trying to dive into two of our activities, like in fact, the one from the first question or from our first class and the last class, just to give a bit to flesh out what, like not just in the abstract or the eye level aspect, but just really being concrete. And the first activity we're going to talk about, it's our first activity. It's activity that the first time the students, both from the legal side, both from the data science side, are going to work together. And we call this activity trade-off activity. And again, I will go into details and really demonstrate what we give to them in that. But the domain of this activity is about social welfare. We're going to talk about about social services in the government trying to implement or deploy an AI system. And what we found interesting about this activity, that we took two concepts that we found a lot of parallel between the legal side and the technical side. From the legal side, this is the idea of balancing values. You have competing values and you need to find appropriate balance. Now, we found that there is something analogous to that somehow, in the kind of the meta level, in the technical aspects about trading off constraints. When you design a new system, doesn't matter if it's AI or not, there are multiple design choices to make, and each one of them have specific, first of all, technical implication. But in this activity, we tie them together. Different kind of technical design choices got some meaning in terms of values. So this activity, again, the first time the teams are working together, we can introduce fundamental concepts such as value specification, stakeholders, and starting this kind of a cross-disciplinary dialogue. The second activity we're going to talk about that, and I will elaborate more in a second, is the last activity of the course. We call it Build It, Break It, Fix It, and it's about content moderation. But it's going to be an integration activity where the student need to actually design a content moderation system. But let's start talking about a bit more detail about the trade-off and then go to the Build It, Break It, Fix It. And just a second, here we go. So the typical structure of the 4-hour class goes like that. Usually students have some kind of readings of pre-class tasks. Usually the law students are getting readings. The data science students are getting tasks to get familiar with the data. So they actually working with real data. Every class, this is the main part. We have some very short inputs, both technical and legal. We present the case study, and then there is the main activity where the students work in teams, 4 to 6 students, half data science, half law students, and they actually need to, and we'll see a demonstration in a second, actually integrate both knowledge from both sides. And then they present their work, and there is kind of an input of reflection again from the staff. And sometimes we have after class a task for the students to reflect on that. Specifically about the trade-off activity, there is a case study. The case study is about the social services want to implement a screening AI system about the child maltreatment hotline. There is too many people are calling, And how do you screen that? By the way, this is existing, for example, in the US, and we based this kind of activity on papers that people published. They get the case study presentation, they get a specific handout of what they need to do. And always there is either some kind of something interactive that requires technical knowledge, or actually code and data, real code, real data, that the students are going to work on that together, both the legal students, the law students, and the data science students, in a way that we make them accessible for both of them. So specifically for this activity, I'm just going to show you very briefly what the students are going to get from us. I can look on that later. I will we'll go to the last part. We actually, in this activity, ask them to make two technical decisions. In building this model of screening cases for further review, they need to choose which data to use, in this case, and what will be the threshold of flagging a case as requiring additional screening. Again, the goal now is not to go into detail and explain, but just these are two technical decisions that carry a lot of legal and value questions. And by each one of the decisions, they can see, at least in terms of what is the performance of the model, the error of the model, and so forth. We'll give you a link. This specifically is accessible for everyone, so that you can play with that later. But this is create time together, technical decisions and legal implication together. And this is the two questions they need to answer. They work in teams. Each team have a different stakeholder, either the police, the ACLU, the social services, the tech company. And that's bring a conversation that, this is the first activity, as I said before. The goal is to understand the scope of responsible AI, scope the challenges of communicating together. Same trade-off, they find that they have totally different meaning for each one of the disciplines. And again, this activity bring up the example of how our other activities are being designed, mixture of students and staff from both disciplines. We base it on challenge. The main activity takes at least 1 hour. So they have a lot of time of working together. We take in real world scenario. This is real thing. This is happening definitely in the US. Another aspect, we bring the signature pedagogy. This is a concept coming from learning sciences, and the idea that for every discipline, you have a specific method of teaching. In law, it's usually about case studies and analyzing case studies. So every class, have a specific case study. And in data science, it is about working with real data and real models. And we have that as well as every class.
I see there's a comment about some black cubes obstructing the view. I don't know if we can fix it, but let's talk about build it, break it, fix it, which is the last activity of the course, where the small teams of students already know each other and work pretty well together. This is where we trick them. And what we do is the session is divided into several activities, but we tell them that what they need to do during the class is be the designers of content moderation, of a content moderation system. They're divided to groups, and some have to build a system that filters toxic content. Some have to build a system that filters infringement of IP. So during the first hour of the session, they get a template, like you see the beginning of it, where they have to fill in. It's in a simple way, even for people who do not code or do not know how the models look like. They just have to write, to classify their systems, saying what sources of information will they use, how will they classify the different information, what will they do in case there is an appeal or a request for an appeal from a user whose content was removed or was not removed. And when they finish the task, happy with their product, we tell them by surprise that now each team is assigned the system of another team, and they're going to break it. Break it not in a nasty sense, but in a fun sense. I mean, our course is based on this adversarial setting when they compete with each other, but of course in a positive manner. And then the group that is supposed to break a different team's project, they go over the template and they try to find the holes and the things that do not make sense. And on the document, they write their comments. And the last part of the project, the fix-it one, is that each team receives its original documents, and then they can decide which comments they want to refer to, what they want to fix. And this also creates a dialogue, not within the teams, which is what the course had focused on so far, but also it opens up the stage for a discussion between the teams. And they really love it, the students. It's a fun activity, and it also lets them go over the different topics that we went through from the beginning of the class. So obviously issues of privacy are raised here, and of fairness. I mean, when you filter content, could there be bias against certain groups who uploaded content or not? Issues of explainability and transparency. So all the material that we went through until this session, they themselves raised it and comment about it to each other. So this is a methodology that we use in that setting in connection to content moderation, but it's something that could be used in other contexts, and it works very well.
And so if we manage to trigger some of your some curiosity among you, and you would like to experiment some of these tools and learn more about them, and even use that first exercise that Shlomi described, we made it available on our website, so you can find the materials and the first activity there, and that is something that could give you a taste of what we have in mind. But we are also interested in expanding our network. We found ourselves as partners and would like to expand the network of potential partners. They're exploring also ways of making these tools available. We found out that simply putting these tools online would be insufficient. So any idea about how to make these tools available, and also how to expand this network and enable more partnering institutions to join in and engage in this collaborative interdisciplinary teaching would be greatly appreciated. And you can contact us through the emails that were provided, but also through this website that is posted here with the link online.
So that basically concludes our formal presentation, and I will now leave it to John to moderate the question and answering. We would really love to hear your opinion.
Thank you, Avador, and thank you everyone for participating. I'm sure you're as fascinated as I am with both the approach and the substance of what we have seen. So again, I encourage you to type some questions into the chat. Have a few questions that have already come to mind, starting with what seems like the most simplistic, but how do you manage to coordinate universities? We've been discussing this in the context of just traditional courses across JD curriculum, and we struggle to get on the same schedule, on the same course. How have you managed to bring continents, time zones, disciplines all into the same course?
It's a big challenge. Let me just say that. So we've learned that coordinating the time is the biggest challenge, actually, and we do it a year in advance. And I think the key for this success was a lot of flexibility we took advantage. So I think COVID have taught all of our institutions that they need to be flexible. And so we were sort of taking advantage of this wave where, universities were going back, back and forth from physical to virtual and hybrid. And so that created some space for flexibility. So I think that was one key. The other key was the fact that, and now I'm speaking as a former dean, as opposed to previous years when prior to collaborative effort like this, we had to negotiate and sign an agreement between universities, etc. What we found out is that the easiest way is to simply coordinate. So coordinate courses rather than create a collaborative course. So all of our courses are listed in our law school or data or computer science curriculum, but we are each responsible for our own students. And so the entire team is doing the teaching and the grading, but each of us is a professor of the students that are assigned to us. So bureaucratically, the students are registered for a course that is led by a local professor, and it is coordinated. So they happen to meet other students that are led by other professors and with whom we collaborate. And so that makes the bureaucracy much easier.
Great, thank you. We have a number of questions that have popped up. Michelle comments, I guess more a question than a comment, but she points out, I think a course like this can be used in industry setting as well. Companies who are designing AI systems could currently likely benefit from a course like this. And I would think that a company would hire a team to present at a firm or for a retreat. To what extent have you been interfacing with industry, and what opportunities do you see there?
So I totally agree with that. We were not only thinking about it, but whenever we talk about it, we get many of these comments. We do have one past experience on the topic. We were actually working with a few startup companies that come from Cornell Tech postdoc program that is called Runway. And we built a special program for them where basically we explained to them the possible harms that can be done by not taking into account responsible AI. Then we've been through some activities with them, not the full scale program, only part of the program. And then we had individual sessions with them. So we started by an intake of understanding their specific application and specific product. And then we built some kind of framework for responsible AI that would allow them to think ahead and plan ahead what can be the responses, or how can they design it into the system. We definitely agree that it can be also for, not necessarily startup. It can be a company that has like a legal support, and they want to get the two groups together and work on this jointly.
If I can just do a follow-up on that question, I'm sure you saw that yesterday, Meta or Facebook just settled with the FTC over constant accusations of unfair housing practices. To what extent can we actually use this kind of modeling to train regulators and create an interface between regulators and industry to anticipate these areas where the AI is in fact violating regulatory practices, but it's so difficult to bring lawsuits in those spaces?
Shlomi or Karni, do you want to?
It's fun. I mean, we're all smiling because we were just in touch with the back in Israel with the several regulators from the Justice Department as well as from specific ministries that like the health ministry that have to do with how they can use these methodologies to try to shape their own regulations so that it reflects what we are teaching and the interdisciplinary combination. So it's something we we thought about, and we agree completely that it's not only academia and it's not only the industry, it's good, like the regulators too. When they shape policies, it's really important that the law and public policy people understand how technology works. We did some small interviews, of specific systems that they tried to implement, and we heard the exact same thing from the regulators and from the tech people, and each was saying that the other was speaking a different language, and that they had several disappointments because the regulators were trying to implement some certain digital AI systems in the public service, and they were expecting, that they said that the system should do this and this and this. But technologically, it was impossible. It seemed simple, but if you knew how the system works, you would have understood that their expectations were not realistic. And on the other hand, from our interviews, the tech side people, they were told, for example, the system should not discriminate. So this is very general to them. What does it mean? So it's not only a theoretical issue, we really see it in practice, that there is a need for something, what we do or something else, but there's also a need for some interdisciplinary discussions and dialogue within the regulators too.
Great, thank you. Turning to one of the other posts, Dennis asked, if I want to try something like this, what is the realistic timeline for getting it up and running? Is it a year? Is it more or less? And would you consider letting interested students in the program participate, even if there isn't a partner institution?
Yeah, so regarding the first question, so in fact, we made a checklist that what you need to do if you want to run this kind of course. And it's indeed, Dennis, you have a good intuition. It's indeed start 1 year before. And I think we really believe that the biggest hurdle, the biggest thing to figure out who is the partner. If you're coming from law discipline, to find the relevant computer science or data science partner for that, and vice versa. It could be in the same institute, it could be from another institute, but we think that the kind of the building the instructor team, this is the main challenge, and this is something that need to happen 1 year before. The next station is diving into the materials, and that's we believe can be done 4 to 3 months before, given what we haven't said that, but for every class there is a lesson plan, very detailed, and we are working on improving that and so forth. So we really created this course in scaling in mind, like, okay, like now after the third iteration, we hope that other people can use these materials. But again, the most important thing is find the partner.
Great, thank you. Ray has
I
asked.
have a comment, John. I just have a comment regarding the second question. This may also relate to another question that may pop up: can people audit the course? And the way that we structure the course, it involves hands-on activities. And we preset the groups, so the groups are assigned ahead of time. We mix obviously law students and data scientists, also by gender and also by capabilities. As instructors, we typically know the students. And we do accept visitors typically to join us perhaps in mentoring, or just join the classes, join the different rooms that they attend while they do their jobs, Zoom rooms, I mean. But there is no point in auditing the course. It's not a course where we give a lot of information that you can audit and process by yourself. You actually have to participate and experience it in order to get the benefits that the course gives.
So then a follow-up to that, I noticed on the website there was a train the trainer section. Are there opportunities for those of us who are listening, who will watch this when it's recorded, to participate in immersive sessions to learn a little bit more about how to bring this into our own teaching?
So this is it's a work in progress. We are working on this. Because we've realized that as Shlomi said, we actually prepared this with a scale in mind, and so we have very detailed description of the course plan, the handouts for students, the tools that we're using, the data set that is what requires the, most of the time a case to create a case study with legal implications and particular data sets and challenges. That takes a lot of development. We cannot put it online because then students, will also access this. And also we realize without, through the experience with University of Bocconi in Italy and with Cornell Tech in the US, that some of the new partners that we worked with required some training while we were working. So we had to become a team to work together. And so we are now exploring, if there will be an interest, that is something that we are now developing, a more systematic training that would help us to onboard other instructors and partnering institutions.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure between the Association of American Law Schools and the Southeastern Association of Law Schools, there are a number of organizations that would love to work with you as you continue to expand access to us. Time for just a couple quick final questions. So Ray mentioned that at SUNY Albany, he's taught a parallel course with faculty at the Albany, 2 separate courses on paper, but teach so it has fewer hurdles. So I guess the kind of the wrap up is there an opportunity for a consortium to eventually emerge of groups of legal and technical faculties to kind of create this community? It's so important that our students who are in the data sciences understand the ethical implications, and that the lawyers who are working in the field understand the technological barriers. So the model is ideal. What can we do to facilitate going forward to make this an ever bigger tent, I guess will be the last question.
I think matchmaking of institutions, right? I mean, that I can envision a website that would enable institutions to find one another. Who needs some law students for a partnering course, right? Or maybe some people will discover that there are courses or similar instructors that are like-minded in their neighborhood or in like a close by university. We actually started this course virtually on Zoom, and for the first time this spring, we had a one-day workshop where we were running this in live, which was really exciting and nice. So it could also work, if you have the appropriate facilities. Some of these tools could be also used live. So if you have 2 teams working at the same university, that could also 2 schools that want to collaborate at the same university, that is also something that is doable. I think there was one question at the Q&A that was really that I found fascinating. I don't know whether we get to choose the question.
Please just take the question.
So the question was whether we've learned something new from our students, and thank you. So first of all, thank you for all the questions, but I think this is such an inspiring question. What have we learned from the students? And I think we've learned a lot. So one thing that we forgot to mention is that the final project in this course, they actually submit assignments every class. So each team has to present their outcome, and I mean, not all of them are presenting, but selectively we have 1 or 2 teams in each class that they present. And then, so they're graded on their submission, they're graded on their oral presentation. They're also graded on their final project, where they actually have to come up with a new challenge that we haven't thought about in the area of ethics and data science and responsible AI. And they came up with, fantastic topics and contexts that we did not imagine. So we've learned on the substance I mean, I'm sure my colleagues have some other insights that I've learned, but I can just say as a colleague, as a lawyer, one of the learning moments for me when a data scientist in one of the first classes said, "Do lawyers even have ethics?" Because she saw the lawyers are representing vigorously their cases, were very emotional about the case and the argument that they have to make. And she sort of was confused about what would be the ethics of lawyers if they can argue both sides. And, and so I think this was, also for the law students, this was a moment for reflecting on the legal profession and how do we incorporate this type of value analysis into our own. So that's wonderful.
And for some of them, it was actually a life-changing course, and we see that through small comments that they make. So there was one law student that said that, guys, you have ruined my life. I now walk around and I see models wherever I go. And then I said, wow, that's the wow moment for that person.
That's wonderful. Any other last comments? We are just at time, but Shlomi, Karni, if you have any last words before we finish up.
Just to say that we would love to keep in touch. I mean, like I said, we're also very interested in growing this community and doing things together. So please keep in touch with us.
Well, thank you very much. And please join me in thanking everyone in our program today. Just a fascinating conversation. Encourage your colleagues to watch the recorded session of this. It is going to be on the AALS website. And of course, go to the Teach Responsibility website itself to learn much more, to download the paper, and to learn much more about the program. I have posted the programs that we have coming up in the next few weeks. We run almost every single week through the first week of August until, of course, school starts and we go back to our day jobs. So again, thank you all very much. Thanks to everyone at the AALS team for making our summer webinar program possible. And we will see you all next week. Thank you.